Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
We sift through stacks of fascinating sources, find those golden nuggets, all to help you get, well, truly informed.
And today we're diving deep into Gustave Flaubert's Madame Bovary.
Right, a novel that's profound, often scandalous, endlessly debated. We're looking at critical essays, analyses, biographical stuff.
To understand not just the story, but the craft, the ideas behind this huge masterpiece of Western lit.
Exactly. Our mission today, figure out how Flaubert turned real life, real scandals into fiction so powerful it still gets people talking, thinking, arguing a century and a half later.
Yeah, it's incredible how it endures.
So get ready for some surprising facts, maybe some aha moments. This deep dive is definitely for the curious.
Absolutely.
Okay, so to really get Madame Bovary, we need context, right?
Yeah.
The 19th century, especially this whole theme of adultery.
Yes.
Tony Panner points out the novel's foresight, its artistic power in handling it. But what did adultery mean back then? It wasn't just, cheating.
No, that's a really key point. It wasn't just personal.
Yeah.
In the 19th century, adultery was, well, it was seen as this huge societal rupture.
A rupture? How so?
Like a transgression against the family as a system, as one source puts it. The family was the core social structure.
Okay.
And even deeper, it was a violation of the patriarchal law, which was all about controlling female sexuality.
Right, controlling women. So Flaubert's tapping into this massive tension between personal desire and these really rigid social rules.
Exactly. That's the core conflict he explores so brilliantly.
And marriage, the nuclear family, domestic life that was everything in bourgeois culture, especially for women.
The absolute bedrock.
So adultery becomes this ultimate act of rebellion, the transgression par excellence, as the source says.
Precisely. And Madame Bovary wasn't the only novel dealing with this, not by a long shot.
Oh, yeah. Who else was writing about it?
Well, it was a huge theme,
Right.
reflecting how much society grappled with it. Think Tolstoy's Anna Karenina, Zola's Thérèse Raquin,
Right.
Fontaine's Effie Briest, Kate Chopin's The Awakening over the U.S., Serrao's La Virtù di Cecchina in Italy. Lots of them.
But Flaubert's Emma, she set a new standard, didn't she? Her inner world.
Definitely. And what a character. I mean, she inspired a whole philosophical concept.
Bovarism. Yeah, tell us about that. You the Gautier, right?
Right. The philosopher Jules de Gaultier, he coined Bovarism back in the 1890s. He called it the power given to man to conceive himself other than what he is.
So imagining yourself as someone else.
Yeah, like a singular power of metamorphosis, imitating some ideal model because you're just swept away by admiration.
And then Albert Thibaudet took it further, calling it a pathology of reading.
Exactly.
Right?
A pathology. For these novel livers, viveurs de roman, literature wasn't just entertainment.
It was an escape.
More than that, a divorce from themselves. They literally tried to live literature.
Yeah.
A bit like, Don Quixote.
And Emma's specific brand of Bovarism came directly from what she read, didn't it? Her library was eclectic, to say the least.
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't just the high-minded stuff. Yes, she read romantics like Chateaubriand, Lamartine.
Gendered stuff.
But also popular historical novels, Walter Scott,
Yeah.
The Bride of Lammermoor, and French novelists, Georges Sand, Balzac. But crucially, she also devoured what we call paraliterature, sensationalist serials, feuilletons, keepsakes, cheap history books.
Like legends about Mary Stuart, Joan of Arc, those illustrious and unfortunate women.
Exactly. And women's magazines, La Corbeille, Symphonie de Salon, even opera plots like Lucia di Lammermoor.
Wow. And visual stuff, too. Painted plates, images.
Yes. Keepsake images, illustrations and prayer books, even a map of Paris. And the sources mention extravagant books with orgiastic scenes and bloody events.
No, it's the sheer mix, the volume and variety that messes with her head, creates this massive gap between fiction and her reality.
Precisely. All that input, often contradictory, romanticized, sensationalized, it paints a picture of life that just doesn't match her everyday existence, that fuels the disconnect.
It's amazing how a fictional world can hit so hard, and it definitely hit Mario Vargas Llosa, the Nobel laureate. He had this intense, almost obsessive thing with Madame Bovary, wrote The Perpetual Orgy about it.
Oh, his connection was deep. A lifelong fascination, really. He remembered seeing the 1952 movie with Jennifer Jones as Emma.
Right?
He even recalled this academic event in Lima in '57, celebrating the book, being interrupted by protests.
Wow.
But the real lightning strike was 1959. Paris. He buys the book, starts reading it in this tiny hotel room, and just feels vampirized, totally captivated.
Vaporized! That's intense. He talks about rereading it constantly, finding new things each time.
Yeah, discovering secret facets, unpublished details. And his critical take was interesting, too. He liked closed works, objective descriptions.
But also wanted rebellion, violence, melodrama, and sex. Kind of contradictory.
A little, maybe. He famously said, "Unreality bores me to death." And he appreciated what he called bad taste, not in art, but as this distortion or exacerbation of feeling that you find in real life.
Huh. And the book actually helped him personally.
Amazingly, yes. He found Emma's story, her somber beauty, her unhappiness. It somehow neutralized his own suffering at the time, as if, and this is his quote, "Emma was killing herself in order that I might live."
That's incredible. The power of literature right there.
Absolutely.
And Flaubert himself, he was clever about weaving in sensuality, despite the censorship risks back then. Little details.
Oh, yeah. Very subtle, very powerful. Justin, the young assistant, tremblingly contemplates Madame Bovary's intimate undergarments.
Oh.
Leon adores her gloves. And that scene where Emma lets her hair down for Leon, like a consummate courtesan, unforgettable.
And this connects to Flaubert's own ideas about sex.
It seems so. He wrote to Louise Calais, his lover, saying, "The good old sex organ is the basis of human affection. Its substratum."
So not affection itself, but the foundation.
Exactly. And you see that in Emma. Her sexual frustration as a wife is a huge driver for her affairs.
And the mix of eroticism and religion is striking, too. Like their first big rendezvous in Rouen Cathedral, Emma's idea.
Yeah, Flaubert wasn't shy about those juxtapositions.
Speaking of Flaubert's personal life bleeding into the novel, the sources mention this foot fetishism, his demon.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Quite something. He apparently kept a pair of Louise Collet's slippers, mules, from their first night together.
Kept them.
And would apparently take them out to caress and kiss. His letters have these odd passages about shoes, culture. He meticulously described women's feet he saw at the beach, red, skinny, with corns and bunions.
Oh, okay.
He even made notes about Restif de la Bretonne, who was known for writing about foot fetishism.
So does this demon actually show up in the book?
Explicitly. Justin is mesmerized by Emma's shoes. Leon's willpower crumbles at the creak of her button shoes.
I remember that.
Maitre Gaumin, the lawyer, his knee crushes her shoe, described as smoking. Rodolphe admires her delicate white stocking. Charles, early on, is drawn to her little wooden clogs.
Even Charles.
And the most poignant, maybe, is the final scene, the anointing of her feet after death, the soles of her feet, which once ran so quickly to quench her desires.
Chilling. It's like this hidden thread running through everything.
Adds another layer, doesn't it?
So how did this whole masterpiece even get started? It came from failure, basically.
Pretty much. A moment of intense artistic crisis for Flaubert. 1849, he reads his first version of The Temptation of St. Anthony to his friends Maxime Ducamp and Louis Boulet.
And they weren't impressed.
Understatement. Their review was brutal. Throw it in the fire and never mention it again.
Ouch. What did they want him to do instead?
Get real. Essentially, drop the vague romantic stuff, pick a commonplace subject, something bourgeois like Balzac did, force himself to ditch the lyricism.
And Flaubert just agreed.
He was more beaten and bowed than convinced, apparently, but he decided to give it a shot. That's when the Delamare story came out.
The local scandal, doctor's wife, affairs, suicide.
That's the one. It became the bare bones plot. And Madame Bovary officially began September 19th, 1851, at night.
And then he just locked himself away. For how long?
4 years, 7 months, and 11 days. An almost monastic existence.
Seriously? Any breaks?
Minimal. Short trips, London, Paris. He actually saw a coup d'etat there, a month off in Trouville, but he couldn't write there. He was a creature of habit, needed his lair.
Wow, what was his routine like?
Insane. Writing from 2 p.m. till 2 or 3 a.m., then often writing long letters to Louise Calais after that.
Exhausting.
Absolutely. Huge highs, huge lows, extreme elation one moment, rage over a single sentence the next. And Louis Boulet was vital.
Critical friend.
The second critical conscience. They spent Sundays tearing each other's work apart, constructively.
Must have been tough. Any particular struggles?
Oh, yeah. He found parts incredibly difficult. The famous agricultural fair chapter. Some bits rewritten 7 times.
7 times?
He's smoking up to 15 pipes a day. People said his lighted study window was like a beacon for the local fishermen.
That's dedication. And this process involved tons of research, right? He didn't just make it all up. He was sacking reality.
Absolutely. Methodically mining real life for fictional details. He reread his childhood fairy tales to get Emma's early reading right, went to a real agricultural fair.
And medical stuff? Hepthot, Clubfoot, the blind man?
Consulted his friend Boulay, who was a medical student, and other specialists. He got lawyers and notaries involved for the debt plot line, the property seizure, all the gritty details.
But he also said everything one invents is true. How does that fit?
It's a paradox, isn't it? He believed novelists basically invent stories based on their own experiences and observations, just reshaped. Reality was the stone quarry. People were pretexts for books.
So the artist is kind of outside it all. A monstrosity.
That's how he saw it, standing apart to see clearly.
So specific examples. Delphine Delamare gave him the basic plot.
The skeleton, yes. Older husband, spending, lovers, debt, suicide.
And this other woman, Louise Darcey, Ludovica.
She provided a lot more texture for Emma's downfall. Extravagant, easy virtue, ruined financially, treated badly by ex-lovers. Flaubert apparently used her story almost directly.
Even linking adultery with luxury, stealing from the husband.
Straight from Ludovica, according to the sources. And other real-life stuff seeped in. Crime cases influenced bits the Marquise de Brinvilliers, a poisoner Flaubert wrote about as a teen, informed Emma's darker side, her abandonment by letter.
And the name Bovary itself. Any clues?
Theories abound. The Lourcel affair involved an Esther de Bovary. Maybe it influenced the name, Emma's personality. Some link it to Charles's bovine, cow-like nature, or even a hotel owner in Rouen called Bovary. Who knows for sure?
And Flaubert put himself in there too, didn't he? Besides the feet thing.
Oh, massively. Emma's sensuality, her artistic side, echoes of his lovers like Eulalie Foucault. Another affair, Madame Roger de Genet, fed into Emma's adultery and Charles's cluelessness.
And Emma's boredom, her famous ennui.
That was pure Flaubert. A direct transubstantiation, as Llosa calls it, of his own crushing boredom during his trip to the East. He poured his own feelings into her.
Even negative stuff, like rejecting fatherhood.
Yes, his despair and harsh words when Louise Collet had a false pregnancy, you hear echoes of that in the novel.
And the doctors, Dr. Lariviere.
A really complex one. Seen as a reflection of Flaubert's own father, a prominent surgeon. But the portrayal is sharp, almost sadistic cutting. Llosa sees it as a kind of revenge on his authoritarian father, especially Lariviere's coldness at Emma's deathbed.
Wow. And other characters, Leon, Charles.
Their legal studies, their professional lives. Flaubert drew on his own hated time in law school, which he famously escaped through illness, and his friend Ernest Chevalier, who became a prosecutor.
Right, the bourgeois path he avoided.
And Leon's relationship with Emma, him being younger, slightly submissive that connects to Flaubert's own preference for older women. An Oedipal echo, perhaps.
It seems everyone is based on someone. Omea the pharmacist.
Inspired by a real pharmacist, Flaubert knew in Trouville. The kitchen lab, the seltzer water, even his love for local rolls, cheminots, made it in as Omea's one human weakness. Plus, influences from a stock character, Joseph Proudhon.
Abbé Bernician the priest?
Pure Flaubert anti-clericalism, dating back to his youth, uneducated, materialistic.
The ball at La Vaubyessard, that pivotal scene.
Based on a party Flaubert went to as a teenager. Left him with this vivid memory of a languid boat ride amid swans and falling leaves. You feel that atmosphere.
And the fiacre scene, the carriage.
Iconic, possibly inspired by an intimate carriage ride Flaubert had with Louise Collet. It may be also Louise's story of nearly being assaulted by Alfred de Musset in a similar carriage.
Oh.
Layers upon layers.
And all the illness and medicine, Hippolyte's foot, the gangrene, Emma's poisoning.
Directly from his family background, father and brother surgeons, and his own nervous attacks, his epilepsy. Perhaps he even cannibalized those experiences. His hallucinations of fiery particles sound uncannily like Emma's sensations before her death.
It's staggering how much reality he wove in. Just mind everything.
He really did. Which brings us back to Llosa's idea.
Right, the added element that Madame Bovary isn't just copying reality.
Exactly. It's a reordering. It makes the fictional world autonomous, able to compete with the real world, critique it even.
And Emma's core problem isn't just that she can't see reality.
It's that she tries to make her illusions real. She lives the illusion, tries to give it concrete form. So illusion and reality become these twisted sisters. One beautiful, the other ugly, but inseparable.
And her reading is the direct cause. The romantic novels falsify life for her.
They create this ideal reality that does not coincide with the real one. The novel says it so powerfully. She remembers the heroines, this lyrical legion of adulteresses, starts singing in her memory, and she herself was becoming, in real life, one of that imaginary company.
She literally tries to become a character from a book.
And in this world Flaubert creates, writing itself is deceptive. It's the realm of fantasy. Think about Rodolphe's breakup letter.
Oh, yeah, that's brutal.
His pen writes all these beautiful, suffering, generous words, while his actual thoughts are just about ditching her because she's become a pain.
The clash between his words and his feelings reveals everything about him.
Total cynicism.
And Emma herself, she's described as basically ambiguous. You can't tell selfishness from charity, corruption from virtue.
This lack of precise definition even extends to her gender, according to Llosa, which leads to his provocative idea. Madame Bovary, a man.
Okay, what's the argument there?
He argues her tragedy is being trapped by her gender. Slavery as a woman, limited to mediocre choices, so she fights back. She adopts masculine attitudes, even clothes.
The pince-nez glasses, the man's hat, the cigar, the vest.
Exactly, trying to break free of feminine inferiority, making her a kind of tragic feminist in his reading.
And she dominates Léon.
Yeah, the book says he was becoming her mistress more than she was his. But it doesn't satisfy her, does it? She despises his weakness.
No escape, really. And her influence lingers even after she dies.
Creepily, yes. She corrupts him from beyond the grave. Charles starts spending like her, ruins himself.
Baudelaire actually liked that ambiguity, didn't he? The mix of masculine and feminine.
He saw it as one of her greatest charms. Shows how complex she was perceived even then.
So this leads to another Llosa point. This structure based on the number 2, everything seems doubled. Why?
Llosa calls it a mysterious ordering. Almost nothing exists for itself alone. It's duplicated, confirmed, denied by something else. It's not historical but magical, he says.
Magical? Give me examples.
Okay, look at the settings. Twin Towns, Toasts, and Yonville. They're practically replicas, right? Tiny, boring Norman villages.
Yeah, interchangeable almost.
Then Rouen is the opposite. Yonville's antithesis. It reflects Emma's own split life, dull marriage versus exciting affair. And Paris is always this distant illusion.
Okay, towns. What else? Objects.
Objects, too. Pairs of things everywhere. Apothecary jars, urns, banners, barbershop poles outside buildings. Emma's 2 pairs of erotic slippers.
Her wedding dress becoming her shroud.
Exactly. The 2 traveling trunks from Leroux. The 2 bridal bouquets marking time. One study found the number 2 appears 18 times just in the agricultural fair chapter.
18 times! That's deliberate. Events, too.
Events repeat. 2 lovers for Emma. 2 wives for Charles, 2 operations for Hippolyte.
Oh, yeah.
2 seduction scenes, structurally almost identical, 2 big balls. Emma even has 2 deaths, the romantic, imaginary one she dreams of, and the horrible, real one.
And dreams.
Parallel dreams. Charles' cozy domestic dream versus Emma's fantasy of escape, violence, exotic lands, each highlights the other.
And the characters are duplicitous, two-faced.
2 different beings at the same time. Charles sees himself as student and husband. His naive hypocrisy, desire, fighting servility. Emma obviously has her public self and her private self.
The 2 Emmas.
And that shared duplicity in conversations, banal words, but eyes and hearts having the real dialogue. Rodolphe even has a theory justifying it. Llosa thinks it reflects the writer's own split living life while observing it.
Makes sense. And pairs of characters who are opposites.
Definitely. The simple fathers, Père Bovary and Père Rouault. And the big one, Homais and Bournisien.
The pharmacist and the priest.
The ultimate tandem. Symmetrical figures of dogma, positivist science for Homais, Catholic doctrine for Bournisien, both just parroting ideas with no real thought. 2 sides of the same conformist coin.
Okay, let's talk about how Flaubert tells the story. The narrative technique was revolutionary, right? That opening. The mysterious we.
Yeah, that's striking. Starts with this plural narrator, someone in the classroom with Charles, who then just vanishes.
Why do that?
It creates immediate intimacy, pulls the reader right in without a formal introduction. Then it shifts mostly to the omniscient narrator.
The one who knows everything, sees everything.
Moves freely, decides what we see, what's hidden. But Flaubert's real game changer was the invisible narrator.
Impersonality, Flaubert's famous rule.
Exactly. This glacial, meticulous observer, describe, don't judge. The artist like God in his creation, invisible and all-powerful, felt everywhere, seen nowhere.
That's what gives the world its autonomy, makes it feel so real, yet separate.
Precisely. It feels sovereign. He also points out that the coldness people felt wasn't Flaubert being cold. It was the narrator's objective, almost clinical, autopsy-like tone.
But sometimes a different voice pops up, this philosopher narrator.
Rarely, but yes. These brief moments where the narrator steps forward, pushes the characters aside, and delivers general truth, a maxim.
Like the one about asking for money being the iciest blast on love?
That's a perfect example. These are presented as abstract and absolute truths, different from the italicized bits.
Right, the italics often signal cliches, common opinions in Yonville.
That's what Thibaudet noticed. Flaubert using italics for those received ideas, the commonplaces he later collected in his dictionary. This anticipates the free indirect style.
Okay, style indirect libre. This is the really big one, isn't it? Flaubert basically pioneered it.
Absolutely fundamental to the modern novel. It's where the narrator seems to disappear, blending into the character's thoughts and feelings.
So you feel like you're right inside their head, hearing their silent monologue.
Exactly. Consciousness and movement. It makes the world feel more objective, but also creates this unsettling ambivalence. Whose thought is it? The narrators, the characters. It's deliberately blurred.
Genius. It really changed everything.
It really did.
So Madame Bovary was this huge break from romanticism, right? No more grand heroes and villains.
Flaubert made normality, the humdrum every day, into art, into beauty even.
And that kicked off the modern novel, where characters are just ordinary, mediocre even.
Pretty much. Heroes drown in mediocrity, as Llosa puts it, paving the way for those later 20th century writers where characters become mere residues, fragmented, almost nothing. A radical shift away from heroism.
And for Flaubert, style was everything. No such thing as a subject. Style. An absolute manner of seeing things.
He wanted to elevate the novel. It was seen as lowbrow, plebeian, least artistic. He wanted to give it the status of poetry or epic.
His ambition was huge. Write about ordinary life with the gravity of history, give prose the rhythm of verse without faking it. He wondered if it was absurd.
He did. Perhaps an absurd undertaking. But it is perhaps also a great experiment, and most original. And crucially, he hated being called a realist.
Right. He said he wrote Bovary out of hatred for realism, not love for it. Didn't want to be boxed in.
Believed his work went beyond labels like realism or naturalism.
It's interesting, Llosa compares Flaubert to Bertolt Brecht. Both hated the bourgeois.
Though Flaubert's definition of bourgeois was basically everyone except writers.
Huh. But Brecht was an optimist, right? Literature for social change.
Yeah, spread truth, fight injustice. Flaubert. Totally different. Profoundly self-centered, despised humanity, saw literature as escape, revenge on life, his perpetual orgy.
And the irony is,
Brecht's very direct democratic work can feel preachy now. While Flaubert's cynical, contemptuous work demands more from the reader maturity, freedom, the truths are woven in, hidden.
Flaubert was also worried about the writing industry, wasn't he? Dependence, selling out.
Deeply. An anguished intuition about it. His phobia about publishing. He saw writing as intensely personal, selfish compensation, even a cowardly, imaginary way to express buried desires.
I am a gambler and have never touched a playing card. Debauchery delights me, and I live like a monk. That sums it up.
Perfectly. Yet despite all that bitterness, that pessimism,
The book lasts.
it absolutely does. An irreplaceable source for understanding that era shaped the modern spirit.
Flaubert saw real literature as dangerous, insurrectional, a challenge to normality. He believed abnormality is as legitimate as the rule, and he proved form was life's best defender.
Yet he was humble about it, more indicative of patience than of genius.
That's what he said. But Llosa turns it beautifully. His genius is wrought of patience. His talent is the work of labor alone. The craft is the genius.
So after all this, what's the takeaway for you listening? Flaubert, with Madame Bovary, didn't just tell a story, he built a world.
A world that's both a revelation of reality and its negation, as Llosa puts it. He showed how literature can be that perpetual orgy, a way to cope with life, maybe even transform it by diving into imagination.
Losing yourself to find perspective.
So here's the final thought, the provocative question from this deep dive. Flaubert turned his own misery, his hatred for reality, into this lasting masterpiece, basically by escaping into writing, right? Into another world. So how might we engage with our own, sometimes overwhelming reality? Could we find our own added element through understanding, perspective, imagination? What perpetual orgies, what deep dives into knowledge might help you navigate your world?